Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA-USA. IPA-USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association, which is comprised of 23 countries, all focused on advocating for the child's right to play. As part of the US efforts, we are introducing Porch Play Chats. And these are conversations with experts on a wide range of topics, all related to the importance of play. You can find the latest Porch Play Chats on our website at IPAUSA.org and click in that top right-hand corner for our YouTube channel that you can subscribe to and our Facebook page. And we release a new Porch Play Chat every Monday. So I'm Deb Lawrence, president of IPA-USA. And with me on the porch is Lisa Murphy, one of our board members. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, nice to be back.
And today we have Ellen Cogan joining us. Ellen's been involved in the early childhood education field from her undergraduate days many lifetimes ago. She presents at conferences, she teaches child development, she does consulting for large and small programs and individuals, and she advocates for young children and their families. Ellen is the co-chair of the Westchester branch of NAEYC, providing staff development and parenting workshops on the pyramid model and serving as an implementation planner for early Head Start childcare partnerships. Ellen's website is www.earlychildinfo.com. Ellen, welcome. We're so glad to have you.
I'm so happy to be back. I had such a great time last time.
Well, so your topic today I was really interested in was the impact of interrupting children's play. And so I have a question.
Otherwise known as keep your hands off.
Can you talk to us more about that?
Sure. When adults interject themselves into children's play, and I wrote that and then I looked up interject and interfere, and I got a whole bunch of words in my thesaurus: inhibit, impede, hamper, obstruct, and otherwise interfere with children's learning. Play, I like to think of, instead of the word play, which makes people think, oh, it's just something kids do. I call it exploration and discovery, and you see the PLAY in there.
Yes.
The children are exploring and discovering, and when you put your face in it, you interfere with what they're doing and what they're learning. So I want to give you an example. There's a video I used to use with in-service training with staff and volunteers. I don't know the name of the video and who to credit for it. And if anybody is hearing this and knows it, please send it to me. Anyway, the picture was a little boy sitting at a table using those 1-inch colorful cube blocks, the wooden blocks. And he's messing with them and he's changing his mind and moving them somewhere else. And along comes an adult and holds up one and says, "What color is it?"
Oh, God.
And he entirely ignores her and goes on doing what he's doing. And after 3 or 4 "what color is it?" all at once, he pushed them all away, got up from his chair, turned around and screamed at her, "Gleam!" I love that, gleam. But he clearly knew the color and she was clearly interfering. And if she was going to stay in his face, he was getting out of there. So it was like a 2-minute video, but it really taught so much. So the problem is that adults all too often feel if they're not teaching something, they're not justifying their paltry paychecks. So how can we help them learn more about what the children are exploring and discovering? First of all, we stay out of the way and we stay quiet. It's so hard to do. As teachers, we're hardwired to explain things to children, to give them vocabulary words for what they're seeing and doing. We're urged to sportscast to them so they can hear complete sentences and hear precise words. And there is appropriate time for that. You can do it as they're cleaning up. You can do it as they're getting ready to go outside, or as they're coming in, or as they're taking off their coats, or as they're serving things on the table for lunch. But you don't do it while they're exploring and discovering. So imagine, if you will, you see a child pushing a car up a ramp. There are so many things you can do and say. Right now, there's about 40 things going on in your head. What can you say? As you're watching or listening right now, you're thinking about it. So my strong urge is keep your mouth shut. You may, from a distance, take brief notes, but wait. You never know what anyone else is thinking, especially children. Just wait. The temptation is so hard to resist. Questions are forming. Would it go just as fast if you pushed it down the ramp? Would this other car go as fast? What are you trying to do with this car? And more and more and more. Stop. If you go nearer to the child and he speaks to you, of course, answer, but not in great detail. He or she is working, and you must not interfere with the work. The subject could be going up a mountain to visit grandma, or any other thing the child has in mind. Now, what about when you're nearby, the child says, play with me? Again, the temptation is to teach. The first question can be, what would you like me to do? That changes the dynamic because you're not in charge. If it's in the dramatic play area, who do you want me to be? If there are blocks or toys or car, where would you like me to put this? All of your input clearly shows that the child is the boss of the play. And as soon as you can, gently leave.
Yeah, please.
I need to see what they're doing in that center right now. I've had lots of fun, thank you. There was one time where I was the consultant and the director wanted me to go into a particular classroom to model play because the teacher was always taking over. So I went into the house where some children were cooking. I asked for a taste and was told what they were cooking and given a plate and play utensils. And I tasted it and said, yum. The children smiled, took the plate and went on with their cooking, and I watched. The teacher came over. She said, I want bacon eggs. The children ignored her. She said it louder and repeated it a few times. Finally, she left. Later, she complained that the children didn't want to play with her. I tried to explain that they wanted to play their game, not hers. She didn't get it.
So why do you think, Ellen, why is it that teachers feel like they have to join into children's play when they haven't been invited? I see this is like a perfect Porch Play Chat because I see this all the time, that they feel like they have to be doing something instead of just observing and listening and not interfering. So
every assessment system, everyone, the NAEYC accreditation system, the NACCP accreditation system, because I work for both of them, the Head Start performance standards, the early Head Start performance standards, you name it, all of them, the creative curriculum, the goals, they all want you to observe, not to put your face in it, not to do stuff. Observe, see what's happening. To me, the worst part of it is when a teacher sits a child down at a table and specifically grills them on what did they play and how did they play and what do they want to play next.
Mhm.
What? How
Yeah.
do I know what I want to play next? I see this, it looks good, I'll jump in and do it.
And I think the other big issue is that, I just remember when I was coaching in Head Start classrooms, teachers would interfere with children's learning a lot. And this was back in the 90s.
Yep.
And I went up to them and I said, why are you asking that question? And they said, oh, we have to ask 4 open-ended questions every hour. And I said,
Why?
I said, I'm not sure that's what the standard says, right? So it's kind of like what licensing interprets sometimes when it's not really in the licensing rules or regs. Sometimes you have to just take a step back and say, let's just read what that says. Now, what do you think that means? And then kind of reach a consensus. But yeah, sometimes
Okay.
it's just that.
Yeah, it's the opposite of what color it is. So if you want them to get away from what color is it, then I don't know how to, okay. The idea for this, being told to ask open-ended questions is not to ask specific questions like what color it is, or is it?
Well, yeah, because sometimes it's a matter of, are we assuming that they know what an open-ended question is? Like, maybe we need to elaborate a little bit on what that is. And to what end? I mean, my 3 favorite questions, as both of you know, are what are you doing and why are you doing it and who is it for?
Mhm.
And who cares what color the Bach is?
Who cares is the big deal.
Right? I mean, who? Seriously. I mean, clearly, if the kid was totally engaged, I mean, I learned 1,000 years ago, why would you interrupt an engaged child? And I think, Ellen, you said it when you got started, was talking about how do I rationalize my paltry paycheck, right? And so if somebody walks in or looks through the window, it looks like I'm doing something to earn my measly hourly wage. And I've had some colleagues even say that, why would we be working so hard? Like, why would you be demonstrating so much effort for something where you don't get, the compensation back? But that's a whole other workshop. But and it's not that we're not wanting to be engaged. I just think that sometimes people don't have a clear picture on what it looks like. And as Deb has said, that sometimes being on the side, which is where we should be, we don't feel like we're doing anything. And I'm remembering on a previous Porch Play Chat when Kristen was talking about how she tells her staff that the minute you feel that you're not doing anything, but yet the room is totally engaged in that discovery and that exploration, it means you've done everything that you needed to do.
Exactly right. So I always, especially when I taught on the college level, I used to like to give adult examples.
Mhm.
So, for example, parallel play, many children learn it at 2, but we never outgrow it. When you're an adult and you're sitting in a room with somebody else and you're each reading a different section of the newspaper, that's called parallel play. Because you're doing the same activity near each other, but not interacting with each other until somebody says, oh, did you hear this? And then it becomes engaged.
Mhm.
So in this situation, not interfering with children's play is like you're in the kitchen and you're cooking. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, I like this. What if I added this? And you're trying to figure out, I like both of these foods. How can I combine them? How much of this should I put in? And you're standing there looking at it and you go for an ingredient and somebody else comes in and says, oh, my mother used to make this and put such and such in it. There goes your whole train of thought.
Mhm.
I'm not making that. Oh yeah, what are you making? I'm not sure. that goes to your question, what are you making? That question is like chalk on a blackboard for me. So adults can relate to this.
Oh yeah, you can totally lift it up. And I found, as both of you have too, in workshops and in classes that you teach, the minute that sometimes we lift it up to an adult example, all of a sudden everybody in the room is like, you know what? I would hate it if somebody did that to me. You know, if you're in the library reading a book and somebody's hovering over your shoulder, oh, did you get to that part in the chapter yet? And what page you're on? And do you want me to turn that there? Is the light too bright for you? You're like, ah,
Go away and let me read.
go away and let me read. Yes.
Well, and I think that the issue that teachers sometimes don't recognize is that interference is stopping, right? So I always say, as soon as the teacher goes over and says, what are you playing? The play stops, right? Which is what you've already talked to us about.
Because now you've implied that it has to be something that can be articulated.
Right.
Right, because kids often just do as they're doing, especially with outdoor materials or with arts materials. And they have no idea what they're doing until they look at it. They're just messing with the stuff. And they see it and they go, I had a little boy was just randomly drawing with a crayon and it was a box. And he said, I made something. And I said, wow, because I knew not to ask what it was.
Right. What was it?
Said, it's a refrigerator. I'm going to put food in there. I never would have figured that out. And I said, how will you open it? So then he made a line for a door. But I waited until he was, figuring out the whole thing. And then I asked the question and then I was worried, uh-oh, did I interfere?
And I get that. And I love that that self-reflection is still a part of the work that you bring to working with children and families. And though that is still an open-ended question, right? It's not like,
where's the door handle?
Where's the door handle? Yeah.
How will you open it?
How will you open it? Because maybe he elaborates into some narrative. Maybe it opens from the top. Maybe it opens from the bottom. Maybe it doesn't open. Maybe you open it with your mind. Who knows?
Maybe it's open already and he didn't make the door.
Exactly.
It's the inside.
Yeah.
So, you never know what somebody else is thinking. And when you were talking about open-ended questions before, and I was teaching child development, I used to have like 2 or 3 classes where that was a piece of each one. And I would assign them, not to write it down or anything, but just as you're walking around and you're talking to people and you're listening, see if you can come up with an example of one closed-end question and one open-ended question. And they couldn't get the closed end. And I said, what's your name? That's a closed-end question. Right. My answer.
Or the one that I've had really good success with is how tell me about your weekend is very different than did you have a good weekend? Did you have a good weekend? It's like yes or no. If yes or no is the only option, then it's probably a closed-ended question. However, to that, and I realize this could be spiraling us in a different direction, but that's what's so awesome sometimes about play chats, is I do tell teachers that even if you're now in the habit of asking open-ended, as in tell me about your weekend, you got to still make sure you have the time to wait
for the
child to respond. So if you're in a hurry, but you're now like, I'm asking an open-ended question, but you really don't care what he did over the weekend, the kid is going to totally pick up on that and is going to realize that you didn't really care. So I'm not really going to take the time to answer. I mean, that recall time, especially for a child under the age of 6, 7.
Yeah.
I got to now reflect. I got to process. I got to bring that up. I got to recount it. I maybe have to translate it into a different language. I mean, that takes a minute. Yeah.
And you have to wait,
And you
right?
gotta
If
wait.
you, and not get impatient because we're not answering.
Or don't ask the question. And I hate
Right.
saying that because I never would want anybody to take that out of context, that somehow I'm saying don't engage in conversation. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you got to know yourself. You got to know the environment. And if right now you don't have time to wait, you are better served not asking. You're better served making a comment, some kind of a general acknowledgement. Welcome to the day. Nice to see you. But if you don't got the time, don't pretend like you do.
That's really disrespect.
100%. We've all been to a party where somebody asks us, to tell us about something, and you can tell they're not listening. They got one foot out the door and one hand on the keys, and you're like, I'm going to bring this story to a close because I can tell that you don't care.
Okay, so here's a question. I'm in the hospital and a doctor comes in and says, how are you doing? And I proceed to tell him.
Mhm.
And he gets all huffy. I was just making conversation and he leaves.
Mhm.
Well, I'm in the hospital and a doctor asks me how I'm doing. I expect to
This would be
answer.
one of those times where I can break social convention and actually tell you.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I can tell you exactly what is going on.
now, I was a teenager and I remember it clearly now because it was such a shock to me, such a disrespect. And he was huffy and mad at me. Like, what?
You asked the
So-
question, right?
Yeah.
So
So
asked the question.
going back to the interfering in play, I was a consultant and I was asked to help open up play in the blocks. Now that's the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah, you just take the sheet off.
So
and the stop sign.
I go in the classroom and I sit down in the blocks. And the teacher comes by and sees me in the blocks and walks away. And I'm sitting there and one of the children said, should I put this on here? And the other child, I didn't say a word, the other child said, we'll see if it fits. What's going to happen? And another kid came along and pulled one out and they all fell over. And to him, I said, if somebody's building, you're supposed to wait. You let them build. And he looked at me and like, yeah, okay. And the other two were happy that at least I noticed he did it.
Mhm.
And they were busy building whatever they were building. They didn't build the same thing up. They built something else. And then it was going to be cleanup time. And I said, where does this go? Where does that go? And, I picked one up and I said, where can I put this to help them? And they were very happy that I was there. So afterwards, the director and the teacher and I sat down and the director said, what did you see that she did differently, pointing to me, than you did? She said, what do you mean? She was in there playing, so I left. The director said, I told you I was sending her in there to model play, not to give you a break.
No.
Yeah.
No. And
Then
you
I said to her, what I did was stay out of it
Mhm.
and ask them a question or two here and there, but not interfering with their play. She looked at me and said, that's weird. So the director said, she's coming back next week and you're going to stay in there and watch.
And watch.
Sometimes it's really hard because I think teachers have a perception of what teaching should be instead of recognizing that the title of teacher is really not what we should be doing, right? We're not.
100%.
Yeah. So I think the very first thing we have to do is say, your title might be a teacher, which I think is confusing, right? So
It's very confusing. That's a whole conversation.
it is. And then you look at the job description and it says you'll do this and this and this, and it looks like teaching. But is that really what the director wants you to do? That may be your job description, because she may be perceiving your role as a facilitator, even though she calls you a teacher. So I think I think we mess up just even with the titles that we're giving to people, because it seems to give them.
Well, we say
Well,
teacher because we want to boost it up that invisible hierarchy ladder of respect in the industry, in our culture. Okay, I get that. And then at the same time, we're chopping off our nose to spite our face, shooting ourselves in the foot, whatever cute phrase you want to use. Because at the end of the day, I think for most of the general populace, when you say teacher, it conjures up images of the old mug jug style. I'm in the front, I'm the big one, I know everything. It's my job to fill your brain with all of the knowledge. And at the end of the day, that is not, well, one, it's not what good school is anyway, but that's a whole other, that's a book. But definitely in early childhood, I mean, and this might sound self-serving, but I'll own it. I'm very glad that I started calling myself a facilitator early on in my career. I didn't have a lot of unnecessary habits that I needed to break up with, if that makes sense. I didn't realize I was serving as a facilitator, but I started going to workshops where people were using language, and I'm like, well, that's what I do. I guess that's what I am. I'm a facilitator of their exploration and discovery within this space. I don't need to be in the front of the room teaching anybody anything. That's not my
and so
job.
I think that's an article, right? So, how does the title that we give people shift their perspective? Yes, and their perception of what their role is in a classroom.
Well, and that makes me think of Carol Garbodin Murray and the Illuminating Care book that she wrote, and talking about, why have we been so avoidant of bringing the care piece back front and center,
Well, on the other side of it, I like the idea of a teacher. I think that a teacher is not just a person who instructs people how to do A, B, and C, but who helps and guides them in their learning. So a teacher in an early childhood classroom, even in an infant toddler classroom, is the person who helps set boundaries so that the children don't get hurt, is the person who helps decide what the materials are, how they should be placed, how to help children join into play, which is another topic right there.
So maybe it's making sure that everybody working in the program has the same understanding of the definition being used, right? Instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, this is what we call you here. This is our definition of that, right? So we can make
what it means on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that as long as there's explicit boundaries that your role is to facilitate play. Your role is to ensure there are no hazards. Your role is to help children learn to resolve their conflicts in an appropriate way. Your role is to create a beautiful environment that is engaging and enticing and makes children curious about what's happening. But I don't think that's what we do in the job descriptions. You'll do parent-teacher conferences 3 times a year. You'll do assessments 3 times a year. You'll do this.
Time from 10 to 10:30.
Yes. Yeah. So, I think that is something, that is a tool that we can use to help administrators of early childhood programs begin to rethink how they're even writing those job descriptions. And what the role.
I think that would help with Ellen's topic, which is that would eliminate the adults. Let's just say that for right now, it would eliminate the adults' expectation that maybe I need to stop and interrupt this in order to do something else. So my stated value system, to go back to another amazing quote from Tom Bedard, I got to identify my values before I can reflect on my practice. So if the stated value is a job description that might be referred to as teacher, but sounds in practice more like a facilitator, then interrupting is no longer an option. And that has nothing to do with what my boss wants or what Miss Lisa wants or what Ellen thinks I should be doing. It has to do with the fact that that practice is not aligned with this value system. And so it becomes a little bit more, I think, cut and dry and not so potentially subjective, you know?
I want to go back to the beginning of what I was talking about in terms of the vocabulary. When you watched children play, let's assume you have watched children play. And then you can say, I saw you pushing that car up the ramp. You pushed it up. Did you push it hard? Did you push it softly? You can add vocabulary that gives them the concepts after the fact without interfering.
And I love how you said after the fact. So you're doing a careful observation. You're maybe at some point in time during the day when you have some one-on-one time with that child, you can say, you know, I was observing you this morning and I watched you do yada yada. And I think that's the difference between having children reflect versus interfering in the moment, right? Is that what I'm hearing you say, Ellen?
Yes, exactly. I've done workshops on what concepts children discover about science when they're infants and toddlers, and how you're not supposed to teach science, you're just supposed to let them discover it. And people get very angry with me because I didn't tell them what they're learning. I could tell them later, even if it's 2 minutes later. When they finish banging the thing and they go to do something else, I can say, you banged that. Did you bang it hard? Did you bang it soft? Did it make a loud noise? Did it make a soft noise? We need to be giving them vocabulary, especially our children who are English language learners. I've done another workshop on standardizing what words we're going to use for different parts of the classroom and different processes within the class. Is it the trash, the garbage, the pail, the basket, the bucket? Where do you throw out the leftovers from lunch? If you're using 16 words for it and you have 5 kids who are learning English, you're not helping them.
Right. Oh, that's a great point. Great point.
In terms of
Toilet, potty.
Right, exactly. So in terms of not interfering with their play, you don't want to start telling them what they're doing or sportscasting what they're doing if you don't even know A, what they're doing,
right,
and B, what words they use for what they're doing.
Oh my, Ellen, this has been amazing. And so if we can sort of do a summary, it's don't interfere, don't assume.
There you
and
go.
Exploration and discovery is play, please. So help, you know, and this is something that co-teachers in a classroom can support each other in, you know, like,
yes,
you know, oh my goodness, I almost interfered when they were playing in blocks today or in dramatic play. They invited me in and I said, well, I'll be the mommy instead of allowing them to assign a role. And, you know, and so teachers to reflect on how the morning went and what was challenging for them with each other in not interfering. Yeah, it would be so supportive.
If they're on the same page.
Oh,
right.
Yes.
Right. And I think it's getting them, that would help them get to the same page. Like one of them could say, you know, I could say, Lisa, did I interfere when I did blah, blah, blah today? And Lisa can be my good friend and say, yes, what else could you have done? Right. So that each person is helping to coach the other person and working through how to improve their practice. And so you and your co-teachers can do this for each other so that you can say our goal for the whole month is to practice not interfering. So it becomes part of our daily routine that we're not interfering. And then it'll stick if we support each other all month, right? So if we can think about ways to support each other in the classroom, and again, this is a time when you might want someone to come in and say, okay, I need help.
Well,
But this
and I
has
think
been,
and forgive me, I think the 3 questions, I want to toss that out there again as a resource for people watching and listening, because it then allows that reflection piece in the moment versus just saying don't interfere and don't interrupt, because I would hate for somebody to think that somehow that's permission to just be completely disengaged.
right?
The question, what am I about to do? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? And who is it for? Because I felt myself going over to the dress up area with the intention to be like, what are you doing? What are you playing here? So now in a split second, I'm asking myself, why am I doing that? Who's that for? Is that moving something forward? Is that interfering? Do I feel like somebody's going to walk by and I need to look like I'm doing something? Like it's inviting that self-reflection piece right in real time.
I think the key is when you say, what are you doing? To say it, that what are you doing is an internal question. It is not a question you are allowed to ask the children.
No, it's I'm asking myself as the adult,
Yes.
what am I about to
Yes.
do? What am
But
I
for
doing?
us- for
What am
us
I
to
doing?
make the distinction
What am I doing?
over and over and over again out loud to say,
Why?
we
Why?
ask ourselves, what am I doing? We are not to ask the children, what are you doing? Or what are you making?
I'm called to share a quote, one of my favorite Alfie Cohen quotes, which is terrific teachers have teeth marks on their tongues.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I didn't know that one before.
Well, and again, a nice practical way to approach the whole situation of trying not to interfere. Ellen, as always, this has been amazing.
Nice
Thank
to
you
see
so
you,
much.
Wizard.
We
Fellow
learned
wizard.
we learn so much from you every time that you're on a Porch Play Chat, and we appreciate you sharing your perspective and your knowledge with us about your experiences in coaching and helping teachers understand what it is and what it looks like and what practice and reflection and facilitation really is. So to learn more about Porch Play Chats, be sure you visit our website at IPA-USA.org. And until next time, keep on playing.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again.